Okay, so hopefully you've had a good go at this yourself, at trying to create a page that has some styling for the background colors, border colors, and font colors, but also trying with the images and the tables. If you didn't get everything done, no worries at all. It's just so good to always try and do your best, even if it's just the smallest amount. Always go at this point for progression over perfection, and I'm sure you'll get there eventually. So just keep on trying. Now we're going to go through a solution together. So I'm going to start off by just closing down what we have so far and starting from scratch. So let's get started. First of all, I'm just going to create our HTML page. So I'm going to go into CSS Practice, and because we are creating a standalone project here that contains images as well, I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder. I'm just going to call this Beginner Styling. And I think to keep the name short here, I'll just do styling.html. Okay, so let's just make sure that we have everything working first. I'm going to create a paragraph. Styling page working. So let's try and load this up now. Okay, that seems to be working. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get the CSS working. So I'm going to come here to CSS Practice, Beginner Styling, and then just for ease of use at this point, this isn't necessarily the best thing to be calling it, but I'm just going to call it styling.css. Okay, so now to test it out, we have a paragraph in here, so I'm just going to test the paragraph by putting in P to say we're going to style all the paragraphs. Then with the curly brackets, I'm just going to put in here. So all I've done is just press enter in order to create some room, in order to write. And then I'm going to put, let's go for background color. I always like using this one first. Background color, blue. And then semicolon to end that line. Okay, it's still not working. And why do you think that might be? Well, because we're not telling the HTML file where to find our CSS file. So in our head here, head section, make sure to put it in the head section because it wouldn't work in the body section. So I'm just going to put in style. Sorry, no, I'm going to put in link. There we go. So, and we're going to change the href here to styling.css. Save that. Now if I refresh this, we'll have the background as blue. Fantastic. So we're off to a good start here. The next thing I'm going to do is just add in all of the different elements that we want. So we want to have h1 for the title, then we want to have an ordered list, then an image, and then a table. So I'm going to quickly do that stuff. I'm going to get in a h1 saying beginner styling page, then we've got our paragraph, and then I'm going to put in an ordered list. So for ordered list, as you might remember, it's OL. I'm going to put in some list elements. I'm going to have, let's just say 3 of them. And because we're not really going into detail here, I'm just going to call this 1, 2, and 3. Okay, fantastic. After that, we're going to add in an image. Now, we don't actually have an image yet, do we? So what I'm going to do is find one. And I'm just going to put CSS image. Go to images here. Okay, yep, that looks fine. Although this one looks a bit cooler. So I'm just going to save image as. And so in beginner styling, I'm going to create another folder just for best practice. I'm just going to call this images. And in that folder, I'm now going to call this just CSS, maybe CSS image, so we don't get confused. Okay, fantastic. So that's been downloaded as CSS image.jpg. So I'm going to create my image here by using the img tag. So the source is going to be, let's go over this together. So this is where our CSS, our HTML file is. So it wants to go into the images folder and then go to CSS image.jpg. So what do we need to do for that? We need to type in beginner styling, because that's the name, sorry, no, into images, because that's the name of the folder we're going into. //css image.jpg. The alternative text, if that doesn't appear, we'll just describe it as CSS image. So let's just make sure that this works. Go to our styling.html, refresh. Okay, fantastic. So the header's working, the ordered list is working, and the image, although a bit larger than I'd like, it's working. So the last thing to add in now is our lovely table. So I'm just going to create a very quick table with one table header and one row that's got the table data. So table row, I'm going to create 2 table headers. I'm going to do name and age. Now I'm going to create another table row that's going to include table data. So John 30. Save that. So now we should have, below the image, great, our table. So nothing's been styled yet. So now let's get onto the fun part. Let's start by creating our background color. So I'm just going to put at the top here, just because it feels right to put the body at the top. You can put them in any order you want, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to put body, because the body is basically the whole contents of the page. And I'm going to give it a background color of, let's go for grey. Save that. There we go, we have a nice grey background. We've already done our paragraph, the background color, but let's also do the font color as well. So for that, I'm going to go for yellow, because that's going to stand out. We can see it. Okay, perfect. Now let's do our ordered list. So for this, I am going to give it, let's say, a background color of red. I'm also going to give it a border. So if you remember, for the border, we need to state the size of the border first using pixels. Then we're just going to have a solid line and then give it a green color. Of course, the colors I'm using aren't exactly aesthetically pleasing at this point, but we'll be getting into that a bit more later on down the line. Next, we're going to go into our image, so IMG, and then let's give this a border as well. We wouldn't be able to change the color of the actual image, but we can change the border. So I'm going to go for 5px, solid, and pink. Okay, fantastic. So now we want to look into how can we change the size of the image. So together, let's take a look at how we can search for this. So go to our search engine and let's say image resize. So here we go. So in Stack Overflow, which is a really useful website where people ask questions about HTML, CSS, all types of coding questions. So let's see if this is at all useful. See someone's answer. So to resize the image proportion using CSS, let's try using this. Width is, so let's try defining the width and see what happens. So it says width and 540px. Let's go for this. So that's saying 540 pixels in width. Let's try that, save it. Okay, let's see if we can reduce it even more. Let's go down to 50, so it's a really small one. Okay, now it looks like it's definitely working because we can see it a bit better. If we go back to 500, it gets pretty big. If we go to 1000, which is just going to be silly, you can see it just gets very, very big. So instead of using pixels, I'm going to do something else. I'm actually going to use %. So I want it to be 10% of its original size. So that looks pretty good. Finally, let's look at styling our table, just the borders. So I'm going to try putting in table, border, and let's go for 3 pixels, solid, yellow. Okay, I mean that looks good. It's doing the outside of it, fine. Let's try just doing the table rows. What happens then? Well, not much at all. How about if I do table data? Okay, I mean that seems to be working for the table data, and if I were to do table header, you can guess what might happen. Okay, so now that's working. Yes, we would like all of those really to have borders. So, as I said at the end of the last lecture, what we can do is actually have all of those. Table 2D and TH separated by commas. Now if I refresh it, we have a border around all of them, and it looks a bit nicer. So hopefully you came up with something similar. If you haven't yet given it a go, I highly recommend you try creating this page by yourself and see how it goes. Okay, best of luck, and I'll see you in the next lecture.